am Jezebel, and this is my stories. The wind off the great sea still smells the same as it did when I was a girl in Sidon. Salt and cedar smoke and the sweetness of crushed purple murex shells drying on the rocks. My father, Ethbal, king and priest of the Sidonians, taught me before I could walk that the gods answered to power, not the other way around. Baal sent the rain. Asherah gave the harvest. And if they did not, you did not question them. You served them harder, louder, with more blood on the altar until they remembered you. I believed that with my whole chest. So when the marriage was arranged, a Phoenician princess for Ahab, son of Omri, king of Israel, I did not weep the way brides are said to weep for the homes they leave. I felt something closer to triumph. Israel was a smaller kingdom than my father's, its God unseen, unpictured, worshipped, without so much as a carved face to look upon. I remember standing on the deck of the ship that carried me south along the coast, watching the cedar hills give way to the dry gold hills of Samaria, and thinking, I will bring something better than an empty sky to these people. I did not know then that the empty sky was not empty at all. Samaria was beautiful in its own hard way. White limestone catching the afternoon light, terraces of olive and fig climbing the hillsides, the ivory palace Ahab built for me, gleaming like a tooth against the ridge. I brought 450 prophets of Baal with me, and 400 more of Asherah, and I fed them at my own table, in my own house, because I did not trust the priests of this foreign god Yahweh to make room for mine. Why should they? He had no image, no high place I could see, just old men in the hills who spoke of him as though he were listening. I told myself I was strengthening Israel, weaving it into something larger. Sidon's trade routes, Sidon's gods, Sidon's gold. I told myself Ahab needed me, and he did. He was a man who wanted the throne more than he wanted to fight for it. Soft in the places a king cannot afford to be soft. I was not soft. I never had been. When I walked into a room, men lowered their eyes or lost their nerve, and I had learned long ago which one I preferred. But there is a particular kind of fear I never let myself examine too closely in those years. A small, cold thread under all the gold and incense, the fear of a God I could not see, could not carve, could not bribe, with the right sacrifice. I buried it the way I buried everything, with more altars, more prophets, more noise. The drought came in the 3rd year, and I remember the first time I understood we were losing. Not raiding armies, not a rival king, rain, or the absence of it. The Jordan shrank to a brown ribbon. The cisterns cracked white at the bottom like old bones. Ahab's face, when he came to me those months, had the gray look of a man watching his kingdom starve and having no altar left to try. And somewhere in the hills, I knew, was the prophet. Elijah, they called him. A wild man in a leather belt who had told my husband to his face that not one drop of dew would fall except by his word. His word. As if a man could hold the sky shut like a door. I hated him before I ever saw his face. I hated him because everything in me insisted that could not be true, that no God who could not be seen could shut heaven itself against Baal. And yet the wells were dry. And my prophets, for all their dancing and their cutting and their screaming to the noonday sky, could not produce so much as a cloud. Then came the day on Carmel. I was not there. I have imagined it more times than I can count. Ahab came back from that mountain a changed color of pale, and the numbers alone told me everything before he spoke a word. 450 of my prophets, gone, not defeated, slaughtered at the Kishon on Elijah's order, After fire fell from a sky I did not believe could answer anyone. Ahab told me of the fire. He told me of the rain that followed it, black clouds rolling in off the sea like a fist closing. The drought broke in an afternoon. I did not fall on my face. I did not tremble the way, perhaps, I should have. I raged. Something in me that had never once been told no since I was a child with a crown on my head simply would not bend to it now. If I bowed to this, if I let this desert God's prophet walk away from Samaria, having butchered my priests and broken my drought and shown my Baal to be nothing but wood and paint, then everything I had built, everything I was, cracked down the center. So I sent a messenger instead. I remember dictating the words myself, my voice level, my hands not shaking at all. So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life like the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. I meant to kill him. Instead, I watched him run. The great prophet of Yahweh, who had called down fire from heaven that very week, fled into the wilderness at one woman's threat. I told myself that was proof I had won something. I did not let myself ask why. If my gods were so powerless, a single messenger from me could put that kind of fear into a man who had just stood unshaken before 450 priests and a mountain of dead wood that burned wet. I did not let myself ask because I already suspected the answer, and the answer terrified me more than any god of stone ever could. There is a vineyard I think about now more than any palace I ever owned. It belonged to a man named Naboth, near our house in Jezreel. Green rose climbing right up under Ahab's window. My husband wanted it. Not out of greed exactly, more that particular sulking hunger of his, the way he wanted things he could not simply take by force of will. Naboth refused to sell. It was his inheritance, he said, land given to his fathers by Yahweh himself, not a thing to be traded away for a better vegetable garden. Ahab came to bed that day and would not eat, lay with his face to the wall like a boy denied a toy. And something in me, some old certainty from Sidon, where kings simply took, rose up impatient and contemptuous. "Do you not govern Israel?" I asked him. "Get up, eat bread, and let your heart be cheerful. I will give you the vineyard." I want you to understand I did not hesitate. I wrote letters in Ahab's name, sealed with his seal, to the elders of Naboth's own city, and I told them exactly what to do. Proclaim a fast, seat Naboth in a place of honor, and set 2 worthless men across from him to swear falsely that he had cursed God and the king. I knew the law well enough to use it as a weapon. 2 witnesses. That was all the law required, and I made certain there were 2. They stoned him outside the city gate. I did not go to watch, but I did not need to. I had done this kind of thing before, without regret, without the smallest tremor of hesitation, and it had cost me nothing. That was what frightened me most looking back. Not that I could do it, but how easily, how little it cost that morning to end a man's life for a patch of ground. I told Ahab the vineyard was his. "Go down," I said, "and take possession." He was in that vineyard walking the very rows Naboth had died for, when Elijah met him there. I was not present for those words either, but Ahab repeated them to me white-lipped, unable to look at me while he spoke. "In the place where dogs licked the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick your own blood. And of me," he could barely say it, "the dogs shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel." I laughed when he told me. I remember laughing, sharp and too loud in that quiet room, because it was easier than the alternative, which was to feel, for one unguarded moment, the full weight of what I had done landing on me like a stone dropped from a great height. I told myself prophets speak in threats, the way merchants speak in exaggerations, to be believed just enough, never fully. I told myself I had heard worse and outlived it. I did not let myself remember that every word that man had spoken so far, the drought, the fire, the rain, had come true to the letter. The years after moved like a river that has already decided where it is going, whatever the banks might wish. Ahab died in battle, an arrow finding the one gap in his armor as if it had been aimed by something more precise than chance. My sons ruled after him, one and then the other, and I remained in Jezreel, the queen mother. My power narrower now, but not gone, never gone, I told myself, not while breath was in me. Word came that a commander named Jehu had been anointed king by one of the prophet's own disciples, and that he was riding for Jezreel with murder in his eyes, and Yahweh's word at his back. I was not a woman who ran. I had never been a woman who ran. I painted my eyes, I dressed my hair. I do not know, even now, entirely why, whether it was defiance, or vanity refusing to die before I did, or some last desperate performance of the queen I had always been, so that whatever came next would find me exactly as I had always presented myself to the world, unbroken, unashamed, magnificent. I went to the window and looked down as Jehu's chariot came through the gate, dust rising gold in the low sun, and I called down to him the way I had called down judgment on so many others. Is it peace, you Zimri, murderer of your master? He did not even answer me directly. He looked up past me to the servants standing behind in the shadow of my own chamber, men who had eaten at my table. Who is on my side? Who? I remember, in the half-second before they moved, understanding completely, the way you understand a wave is going to break over you a breath before it does, that everyone I had ever commanded could, in the end, be commanded by someone else. That loyalty bought with fear buys nothing when the fear changes hands. They threw me down. I will not pretend even now to soften what came after, because Elijah did not soften it when he spoke it, and Yahweh did not spare me from it for the sake of my pride. The horses trampled what fell. The dogs came, as it had been said they would, down to the smallest detail, so that when they went to bury me, there was almost nothing left to bury, only my skull, my feet, the palms of my hands. Even my body could not be gathered up whole, to lie in a grave with honor, exactly, precisely, as a man in leather and dust had promised a queen who laughed at him decades before. That is what I want you to understand, even if you are listening to this and wondering what any of it means for you. So far from Sidon's shore and Jezreel's dust, I spent my whole life believing that power was the thing that could not be taken from me, that if I only served my gods loudly enough, cut myself deeply enough, filled every high place with enough incense, I could hold heaven itself at bay, the way I held my enemies at bay. I was wrong from the very first altar I ever lit. Not one word Yahweh spoke through that prophet failed to come to pass. Not the drought, not the fire, not the rain, not the vineyard, not the window, not the dogs. Every single one exact. I do not tell you this so you will fear as I feared, hard and clenched and always one step from rage. I tell you so you will hear, in the silence I never let myself sit in, what I was too proud to hear until it was far too late. That the God I mocked as empty sky was never silent, never absent, never mistaken, and that he is patient far longer than I deserved, before his word finally came due. If you are still breathing, still reading these words, the patience has not yet run out for you. Do not spend it the way I spent mine. If you have been blessed by this story, subscribe, like, and share it with a friend.